Hello, hello, and welcome to another episode of ZenChats. I'm Zeneca, and I'm here with my friend Phraze of PhrazeBoard's project, of many other things. We're going to get into his history, his project, his future, his ideas on the space. We were just chatting before the show on a whole bunch of stuff, work-life balance, royalties. There's a lot we can chat about, but before we get into that, welcome to the show. How are you? How's your day going?
I'm honored to be on. I'm a big fan of the show, and I'm doing great. It's been a good day. I just ran and jumped in puddles with the kiddos for a couple of...
I love that.
Killed an hour right before this, which was great.
I thought you were going to say I just ran a half marathon or something. But jumping in puddles,
I'm a biker,
honestly,
not
it's
a
probably
runner.
better.
Yeah, I mean, man, whatever you can do to get energy out with the kiddos is... It's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle.
Yeah.
So,
I was actually thinking about this yesterday. We're immediately off topic, but that's how this goes sometimes. But I was chatting to someone who has kids and is in this Web3 space, and I was like, I don't know how they do it. Like, I struggle, and I'm burnt out and tired, and I don't have kids. And, you know, just the fact that people can be on top and like stay on top of projects and with one kid, two kid, five, like it's crazy. So just hats off to you, just for starters.
Oh, honestly, I think one thing, so I was probably a chronic procrastinator pre-kids, and the one thing having kids does is forces you to utilize your time well. So you do get the same amount of stuff done in a day, but it's like you look for moments. You look for, they're occupied for 3 minutes, I can get that email done. Like it is, you get really good at juggling in that balance. So yeah, and I have a partner who is just, I mean, she's stay-at-home mom, full-time mom, and she is very patient. Well, I'm like, oh, there's something minting, or, there's a space starting right now, and I got to jump on it.
Yeah.
I am missing bedtime right now, and I'm going to pay for it later, but the whole bedtime routine right now,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you missing bedtime to be here with us.
Man, it's my pleasure.
All right. Let's dig into, I guess, I always like to ask of people's backstories and like their origin story. What did you do before this whole NFT Web3 space, like pre-NFTs? And then how did you learn about NFTs and what got you here? How did you get into this space?
Good question. I haven't had a real job in like at least 12 years. I got laid off from my last job about 12 years ago. And instead of applying for a new job, it's like, I think I want to be an artist. And credit to my wife, came home and said that, and she was like, okay, but like, how are we going to make money? It's like, I got a plan.
Fair question.
It's a very fair question. Set up a website my first year in 2012, did a piece a day art project, and ended up selling out every piece I made. It was just ink on canvas at that point and just selling stuff online. And first year was fun. It was grueling to do like a one every day. But then switched to one a week, and I was doing letterpress prints for 2.5 years after that. And that was a really fun ride. Like, ended up, Gary Vaynerchuk helped me launch that project. Like, the very first piece we did that year was with him. Got commissioned by Tony Robbins and did album work for like Mraz and book covers for Hank Green. Like, it really just leaning into creating art and selling it online, like that became my identity. And that's what I did basically up until 2015. Got proper burned out on making art. And at the time, my wife had a baking business for some coffee shops that were opening up, and she had grown from 1 to 3 locations and was like, I'm dying here. So I was like, I put all the art stuff on hold and became a baker with her in the middle of the night.
That's awesome.
We went from 3 to 14 locations and hired a bunch of employees, and we were slinging like 1,000 pastries a day, like ludicrous. The hardest I've ever worked in my life was those midnight to 6 a.m. shifts with her, but it was also some of the most fun. And then we had kids, realized that was not compatible with that schedule. I had started a design agency with a friend of mine. We did a Kickstarter for nothing, which was fun. It kind of put us on the map. And we're doing that for a couple of years until the NFT space. Like, I was working on a big mural project, and a friend of mine, his brother, co-founded Catalog.works, the music platform, and was just killing it in the NFT space. And I was hearing stories about how much fun they were having, and started trading crypto. NFTs were moving way too fast for me. I was like, I can't even. I don't have time to do this right now. Started dabbling in crypto, got really lucky, trading crypto, and minted a couple things. But then the first big mint, the first thing that I was like, okay, like this is big. I think this is the one. I was actually going for Vayner's VFriends because I've been a Vaynerchuk fan forever. Missed out on that because PayPal held my funds transferring from bank account to bank account. Yeah. So I said, if I ever have this much conviction in another project, I'm going all in. And when Kevin Rose announced that Proof was going to mint, I said, this is the one. Like, I'm going to scrap some fiat together and go for it. And a buddy and I actually pulled together some ETH. We thought we would be able to get one pass together, and just by the way things went on mint day, we ended up scooping 2 and have held 2 ever since. So that was, and Proof as a community has just been, there are a few greater like entrance paths to the space than Proof. So
I've spoken to a few people recently where Proof was like either their first NFT or just like their first major NFT and major community they were part of, and it's really brought in so many tremendous people and minds. Yeah, it's
been incredible. I mean, it's how I got to know it's how I got to know ZenAcademy. It's how I got to know ZenFT and so many of the other collaborators I've had the opportunity to work with, which is great. So
something you mentioned about how you had so much conviction in Gary and VFriends and missed it, and then said if you ever have that opportunity again, you're not gonna. I'm exactly the same, except I missed it again. So I missed VFriends. I've been watching, like, I watched Gary's Wine YouTube videos 15 years ago, and I remember I would watch his motivation videos, and then as he was dropping VFriends, it was like I was just getting into the NFT space, and like I didn't quite fully get it, and the mint price was pretty high. It was like, I think, Dutch auction starting at high prices, and I just sort of like put it out of my mind. I was like, I'm never going to be able to afford that. I don't get it. And obviously it immediately rocketed in price, and I regretted it ever since. And I was like, all right, if that ever happens again, that was my biggest regret in the space for a long time. And then Kevin comes along and releases the Proof Pass, and I don't know how I missed it. Like, it was so clear as day. I was listening to Modern Finance, and then I listened to every episode of Proof. I was there, but I justify it, and I forgive myself by it launched like not long after I launched ZenAcademy in the 333. So I was probably just busy on that.
You were head
and
down
it wasn't
focused, totally.
Hopefully, yeah. And so I was just like not minting, not trading, not flipping, and then the price just kept going up and up and up, and I was like, all right, I'm going to wait for a dip, and then it just never really happened. So then I bought in at like 55 ETH, and obviously, I mean, that worked out really well. I got in before Moonbirds, but that was my largest regret, not minting Proof. But yeah,
it was so hard when we had 2 passes. I was like, 8.6 was I was like, if I can sell one of these for 8.6. Good God, I'm going to be riding free. And it screamed past it so fast. I was like, now let's see what happens. This is nuts. But I think you've done okay. I think anyone can
I've done all right. Yeah. No one's shedding a tear for me. So you said you had 2 passes. You no longer have the 2 passes. Is that correct?
I do. I do.
Oh, you do still have both?
So
all right.
The tee-up, I understand the tee-up. So we did leverage 1 pass for PhrazeBoard, but my whole goal with PhrazeBoard was I just want to sell enough access passes to scoop another Proof pass, and that's kind of my break even. And if I can do that, so for a time we did hold 3. I was hoping there'd be some sort of drop or something while we had 3, but alas,
such is life.
Such is life. But the game ended up getting solved, and we just transferred the pass about a week and a half ago to the winning team.
Okay.
So
so I mean, let's dig into this. You mentioned a game in PhrazeBoard. What is PhrazeBoard? It's fascinating. Like, I know what it is, and it's really, really cool. And you gave away a Proof Pass, which is crazy. What is it? Where did the idea come from? How did it go?
Yeah, so the realization when those proof passes like really grew in value, I knew that I could just take that and sell it. And it especially when they were up around, good God, like the high heights they got to
100.
yeah, 100, 130 or so. Like that's a lot of cash.
Yeah.
But I was looking at it around the time they were 30. I was like, man, this is pretty significant, and I could sell it, but I had this idea for a contest, and I had run a previous project called Steal This NFT. This was my first attempt at anything NFT related, and it was just a basic, I set up a wallet, took the seed phrase, worked that into a piece, turned it into an NFT, dropped into the wallet and said, I'm never going to sell this, but if you can crack the piece, you can break in and get it. And that was so much fun. It ended up getting cracked in 6 days by a guy out of, I believe, New Zealand, and goes by the name Silver Anth. And I know that's his name because he was also on the winning team for PhrazeBoard. But we'll
Wow.
which is nuts. But
Yeah.
so I basically thought, if I use this as kind of like a carrot to dangle at the end of this contest, I can direct that attention both towards me, because I was, a new nobody in the space, and along the way lined up with 20 different collaborators. You were gracious enough to be one of them, and shine that attention, move that spotlight from creator to creator to creator to do amazing things. And I've done a lot of kind of collaborative work with multiple creators in the past. And I love being able to kind of give attention to art that I like and creators that I like. And this felt like a worthy cause, to where it was like, even if I break even, or worst case, even if I lose the proof pass, if I've given people something that's like a really good experience and a lot of fun, it'll be worth it. So PhrazeBoard in a nutshell was an NFT treasure hunt where all the clues were scattered amongst the NFT space with the help of 20 different collaborators. And like you said, at the very end, there was a proof pass as the grand prize. But beyond that, thanks to the first collaborator to join, Mr. Trey Ratcliffe, every single clue along the hunt, and there were 25 different questions on that hunt, had a different prize. Most of them were supplied by the collaborators that we worked with. So that was PhrazeBoard. It ran from June. It ran from June to the end of July, and here we are.
Yeah, it's such an epic idea, and I just love the thought behind it, the way to sort of shine that spotlight on multiple communities and engage the community in this long treasure hunt. I think that's fun. How did it work in terms of, like, if someone wanted to play the game, did they need to mint a token? What were the mechanics like that, or could anyone enter?
Great question. So we actually had two games, one that was entirely free to play. People didn't need to do anything. That one had a grand prize of 7.77 ETH, and that was just to let people test the waters and see how the game worked. The way the game functioned was, I took every potential seed phrase word, it's 2,048 words, the BIP 39 word list, took all those words, hand drew them. It's actually behind me, but you can't really see it. I'll drop a link or something so people can take a look at the game board. And each day we unveiled a different question, and through those questions they would move around the game board and then either land on the answer or go to a collaborator's name, of which they would have to go try and find the word that was hidden somewhere in their collection. So for the game, for the proof pass, we actually did access passes, which was kind of controversial because we did no secondary sales and no transfers on those passes. And the reason we did that on the first game, we are not doing that again. The reason we did that on the first game was, since the treasure hunt was such a long haul, I didn't want, I wanted it to be like kind of high stakes to play. Like if you're showing up and you're going to play the game, like I only wanted people there that wanted to be there, that wanted to play. I didn't want someone who had any incentive to try and game the system or like know they could sell their pass if they weren't loving it. Like I really wanted commitment from the people that were playing. And one of the things we learned was 25 questions. I mean, it was a month of puzzles that were in many cases hours or days to complete. Like it was a grind. I wanted it to be like pretty lengthy, but man, on both end, like on our end creating the stuff and the people solving, like it was a truly Herculean effort that they went through to solve all this. So yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, to win a proof pass though, it's like $100,000, $200,000 depending on the price at the time, maybe even more. It reached higher at one point. You want that to be a Herculean task, and like that's got to be a tough slog.
True. But the downside of that was the hurdles to get to the collaborators was like we had to make them higher and higher because we had like actual professional puzzle solvers in the game, which just I didn't even know that was a profession. Like
I was just gonna say that's a crazy
the winning team.
Although,
they're called Leah, this girl from Greece. I was talking to her after the hunt, and she's like, I haven't had a real job in 3 years. I just solve crypto puzzles. Sole source of income. It's like,
wow.
Okay. Yeah, so I didn't really know what I was up against.
It's crazy that there's enough crypto puzzles for people to solve to make a living out of.
Dude, it's pretty amazing. I had no idea, and the problem or the challenge with that was you had a few dedicated people who were just like, I mean, they had amazing tools. The tools that they built to try and help solve this, not in like a cheating like bot or brute force way. We did have some of that we had to squash, not from the serious players, but just image lookup, like AI tools and things like that to try and help them navigate the board quickly. They had more sophisticated tools to solve the puzzles than I had to actually like craft. I was just like, I had an Excel spreadsheet and was just like circling stuff. So it was pretty amazing to see. But the balance between pro puzzle solvers to make things that would like keep them sustained and the casual people that just wanted to like a fun experience and to be introduced to new projects and things like that. That was a tricky tricky line to kind of walk. So yeah,
because I guess the casual people would absolutely not stand a chance against the professionals. So how much fun is it when you're not going to win?
Totally. So the burnout was real across the board. I mean, around day 16 or so, and to know you still had 9 or 10 days of puzzles was like, okay, like we can do this. We can do this. But I think people ended up having a good time. I think for the most part, people had a really good time.
Do you know how many teams were participating in it, or how many people were trying to solve it?
Yeah. So of the blue game, we actually only minted out like 500 passes or so. So it was far less than we thought. But because of the lack of secondary and all that, I think that was fair. It was hard to get an accurate count of like how many guesses there were, just because so many bots were set up, especially on the red gamed brute force. We had like over 1 million guesses logged, and I know we didn't have that many people play. So and we could see like the active guess count as the days drew on declined every single day, just because people got burnt out or things got really hard, or if they got stuck, they usually wouldn't come back. So we learned a ton. It was the primary teams, like I would say there were 4 or 5 teams of like 4 or 5 people. The winning team was a team of 6, and in terms of individuals, like we had 400 or 500 people that were like seriously playing throughout the game. So
that's still a lot.
It was a decent. It felt like a decent number,
especially during a bear market.
I think people at that time, it was the beginning of the bear market. People wanted a distraction, and so I think it was a welcome distraction for a while, and then real life kicked in for a lot of people. So I think once they realized, like, there was one team, the winning team, just dominated. They were the first to solve the majority of the puzzles, and it kind of became clear, like, this is their game. Everyone else is just kind of playing in it. So so that was one of the things we really wanted to address moving forward. Like, did not want to create just another like impossibly tough puzzle or anything like that. Like, we learned, like, luckily, we learned a lot in this first round, and the beauty of this space is you can adapt and modify quickly and take off and try different things. So it's what I'm setting out to do in the next round.
Well, yes, it sounds like this is teed up perfectly for what's coming next. It sounds like you're very much working towards, is it PhrazeBoard 2 or another game or another idea in this area? What's next?
we lovingly referred to it for a while as version 2, and the emphasis or the focus is really not on another treasure hunt. Like, there will be another treasure hunt as a piece of it, but the part that really lights me up, the part that I wanted to amplify and really lean into, was creating something that really gives people artist discovery, like chances to stumble across artists they wouldn't have found otherwise, and to give artists, both emerging, underrepresented, and even established, just a different spotlight, a different stage, a different way to present their work. And while we finished the clues on the first phrase board, we immediately switched gears and started going, okay, like, what have we learned from this? What can we do? Like, one of the biggest things was tradability. So we wanted to make something that was collectible, tradable, but still give it the same utility, to where it's like, if you hold this new thing, you have access to whatever games we put out. If it's another treasure hunt, or I can say this new collection is based around, we're still anchoring to that BIP 39 word list. And every single one of those words is, in essence, going to be its own NFT. So it's going to be this kind of card collection. How much of this have I showed? So this is where we get to where I'm like, I don't think I've showed you. Maybe some.
Yeah, I don't think I've seen much of this or heard about much of this. Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm so okay. So I'm trying to think of how much I can get into on air, and I'm sure I will show you some stuff off air here. But I mean, whatever. I'll be as open as I can about this. The big thing is, think of it as a trading card collection, and every single card is going to be based on a word or two from that word list. And then think of that basically as a blank canvas, to where they're all going to start as individual cards. But as time goes on, I've connected with all the artists that we worked with on round one. Hope you'll join us again for this new project. And my goal is, since there's 2,000 cards, I'm going to do 500 pieces myself. And then the other 1,500 I want to reserve for other artists. And have already approached a few. So we have like Rachel Ryle, who did NFT Rex, if you've seen her collection on Super Rare. So dinosaur is one of the seed phrase words. She has claimed that word, and
that's awesome.
So, word on the board, and then kind of take the high fidelity version of that, right? Here's another example. Word skull. These were cool. These were two that I put together, and then the idea is take that, turn them into these collectible trading cards, and then so the cards themselves are going to be all the utility, right? All of it's your access pass to games, it's hopefully collectible, tradable, that sort of thing. But at the same time, so all the cards are going to start, as you see on the left here, in this kind of blueprint, kind of basic shell, and they will be upgrading over time. And each artist that is featured, this is like hopefully a nice way to stand up and support these artists. Every single artist that's featured, say we release one of these a day, we'll do a Twitter space with them, we'll do a blog post, like give them as much of the spotlight and attention as we can. And then in terms of artist revenue, the way we're planning on doing this, all these artists have offered to design work for all these cards for us. And I know that a lot of the kind of really pure artists in the NFT space have this, they feel tremendous pressure when it comes to like, oh, what's the utility my pieces are going to provide, or that sort of thing. Well, all the utility will be baked into the card, but to help the artist kind of generate some revenue, we're also going to do a gallery version of these cards, to where it's not like go back to just the just the piece, right? We'll sell or auction off a gallery version of this. 100% of the proceeds are going to go to the artist. Like I want to raise money for artists. I want to help artists sustain themselves, right?
Yeah.
And with a distinct kind of prerequisite for these pieces that like these don't have utility. This is a gallery piece. This is buy this to support the artist, and then all the utility will be baked into the card. So we're going to do kind of two separate collections, basically running side by side. And that's the direction we're headed with all this.
That's very cool. It's clear you can see the evolution from from version 1 into version 2, or from the PhrazeBoard to this new concept. And I think it's smart. I think it's adding the collectability and the tradability is... Like, I thought it was smart to not allow trading on the first version. Like, it made a lot of sense. But...
It did.
Yeah. This also makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah, I think if we begin with this mindset of trading in mind, what's cool about it is... or one of the things that's cool about think about like an access pass, but they're all unique. The fact that each card is its own word. We can run different game types to where we have one called Heist. And it's kind of like a micro version of what we were doing with the treasure hunt, where we'll set up wallets and put small prizes in them and take the seed phrase words from that wallet. Say you're holding the word galaxy and it was one of the seed phrase words. We can update metadata behind the scenes or private data in OpenSea, just let you know that your word is in it, and actually try and get people to collaborate and work together. So it's going to take a little bit of tooling on our end to design game types that are more collaborative and less like every man for himself and things like that. But I like that challenge, and I want to create things that people want to show up for and people want to like explore new artists or get exposed to new artists that they wouldn't have any other way. Yeah, that's really, really cool. How do you sort of, or how are you approaching the issue of, again, these expert puzzle solving teams, collecting a whole slew of these and winning every challenge? Very, very good point. Very good question. I don't, in terms of limits and things like that, haven't thought through that piece yet. I think there are, well, actually there's two more big components here. One is, there will be certain, like, multiple game types, right? So some game types, just having one card is one access pass, and holding a dozen, it's not going to make a difference. So there will be some that if you hold multiple cards, you might have an edge over other people, but though you don't necessarily have to participate in each game type. So I want to kind of create that divide and say, okay, like puzzle maniacs or people who are like trying to game the system or collect, mass cards, sure, go ahead. Here's game types that cater to you. And then for more casual people or people that want to work together and try and create game types that are more like everyone wins at the end. It's kind of like Phraze versus everyone. So I think by developing those different game types, there will be a little bit of something for everyone. One other thing that we're doing is, where's that card type? So the card on the left here, this kind of blueprint model, I'm considering trying something, and we haven't talked about this at all, but I'm so interested to get your take on this. I've been so the development team that helped me build PhrazeBoard is working with me again, and they went from like contract developer to like they're my co-founders in this next leg.
Amazing.
Which is so fun. They're really, really good people. And one of the things we talked about that I was surprised they were open to was we're going to take this blueprint version of the card deck, and I'm going to take all the source files for the artwork, we're going to take the contract, and we're going to release the whole thing as an open source project. So anyone that wants to stand up their own deck, like think about a generative artist to where... or an AI artist where you can take like you could crank out a deck a lot faster than we're going to because of the way we're doing artist spotlights and all that. We want to do game types to where if you have these cards, anyone can play with any set of cards that they're playing around with. So doing an open source model, I'm hoping continues to, like, I don't want revenue from it or anything like that. It just we built a pretty great contract. All the art and source files, like to be able to give someone a tool that they can take, and if they like this concept through this platform that we're building and all the game types, like to be able to allow people to stand up their own decks and things like that, or their own communities. Like if ZenAcademy wanted to take and say, okay, here's the artist within ZenAcademy, give them each, 50 cards or whatever, have them design it, have a complete ZenAcademy deck. Like, I think that'd be a pretty cool thing. So
that would be awesome.
Hopefully people take and run with it, but we're going to provide all that, like documentation and all the source files. Hopefully do so in a way that doesn't feel like, it can't be a zip file. People are going to be worried I'm trying to scam them. So we got to find a way to safely get that to everyone. But that is one of the aspirations for this as well. So
I know. I think that's awesome. What I'm getting is that like a lot of what you're doing is it really leans into this whole composability and interoperability element, or these two elements of really blockchain technology that make it so magnificent, where anyone can come in and interact and create their own thing, and you can, you know, interact with their creations or do stuff for their. It's really fascinating, and I love it. And I think it's the projects that I am most excited by generally are the ones that really lean into that. And yeah, I think we have barely scratched the surface of that. Like, imagine 5 years from now when there's 10 million people in the space, and now all of a sudden there's these early building blocks that were created in 2021, 2022 that people are doing all sorts of crazy stuff with. It's just fun. It's fun and exciting.
It's the hope. I mean, really, it was amazing when we ran the first PhrazeBoard, because it really was like barely break even, right? And
yeah,
I had a lot of like pretty seasoned flippers and things like that would approach and be like, "Why? I don't understand why you did this." You know, like I don't know. I love the art. I love the space. I love supporting anyone tinkering and building and trying to do things with authenticity. And to be able to lean into that more and to have bandwidth and runway to be able to do that, like at least step up and take a swing and see if this can attract not just flippers but like seasoned collectors and people that are like, if we're peeling this out even at a quicker cadence, it could take a couple years to get a complete deck, which is not the kind of timescales we're used to seeing in this space. It really isn't. But I think the functionality will be there for the card. So hopefully, my biggest fear is people look at it and look at the fact that when this gets launched, all these cards are going to look relatively the same, even though they'll be functional. I don't want people to look at it and be like, oh, they were just doing like a slow reveal or anything like that. It's like, no, like this slow drip is the point. We want to showcase these guys. We want to highlight these artists in a somewhat reasonable timescale. And we did that with the first PhrazeBoard. Like, we revealed one clue a day, and people were like, at first people were really itching, like, come on, like I just finished this one, let's give me more. But getting into that cadence and showing people like, no, we're here to build, we're here to support and be here long term. It may not do well short term, but I think we'll build momentum over time, and I just want to see how it goes. You know what I mean?
I'm really excited for it. I think it's something special, something different. Like, that's the thing that always stands out to me, is if someone's doing something that's not been done before, that's different. Like, I love that, and I think it's like innovation is really what moves the space forward. And I think you've clearly got that in spades from the first project to this one. So. Very exciting. I want to ask or like turn attention to the elephant in the room, and you know, the topic of the week is Creator Royalties, and I just love to get your thoughts on the whole situation as an artist, as a project founder and creator that works with a lot of artists. Like, what do you think about this whole discussion? Yeah,
it's a great question, man. I think you and I both when it blew up, thanks to SudoSwap making the move that they did. I think that was the catalyst.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was.
When it blew up, my gut reaction as an artist and as a creator was like, well, that's shit. You know, like man, I get it, but I know when I learned to write my first contract, I was actually kind of stunned, because it's like, okay, cool, and this is the part where you write for royalties, and I had to have it explained to me, like, well, I mean, yeah, it's kind of aspirational, though, because the marketplaces don't have to follow it. And it's like, wait. I thought that was, like, part of the smart contract. Like, isn't that...
Everyone has like, this moment where it's like, you realize you can't hard code royalties into smart contract, and you're like, but isn't that the whole point? Like, what? That was one of the things that we were sold on in the space. Any of the artist friends that I was working on to onboard into this, and with PhrazeBoard, we had 4 different creators release their Genesis collection in concurrence with their clue being released. So, and in those conversations with those artists, like bringing them online, I was like, royalties forever, it's amazing, and they were like, okay, like I'm sold. And when all that kind of came under the spotlight, and it was like, well, maybe not. It was like, oh, okay, well. All right, that doesn't sit well, but I get it, and I read your post, which was fantastic. I think you had maybe skews all altruistic to where it's like people will do the right thing. It's like yes, for the most part, but also
if you think like percentage wise, when it was like 100% before, even if 20% don't, people like established artists will hit it. But it's not that I'm worried about the established artists. What I was looking at, like, as a creator, was like, okay, when it comes time to onboard new people, it's like, what's the selling point to like come into the NFT space, right? And the only two things that I really kind of circle back to that makes sense at this point are, it is a truly global audience, right? Like back in 2012, when I did my Piece a Day project, I remember thinking like, oh, this is so cool. Like, I ended up in those 3 years shipping pieces to people in like 43 different countries, and thought, this is so global. This is great. It's like, I mean, yeah, but it's people paying with USD, right? And that was the limitation, was paying in, and you know, whatever currency and whatever exchange they were dealing with, right? To where in this space, it is truly like the winning team member was from Greece. Never would have met her, never would have connected with her beyond this. Like, and the number of artists, like, we featured artists from New York and Turkey and all over the world, and that global community, to me, that's one of the biggest draws. And there is still, even though we're in a bear market, it feels like there's still a sizable amount of attention here. And I want to say, like, just through the projects that I do, this is still a space that celebrates exploration and experimentation in terms of things. So any artist who has an established career niche in the Web 2 space, I am proof that you can kind of jump out of whatever you were pigeonholed into, try new things, and if it resonates with the community, it's celebrated. So I was bummed to see the royalty thing happen. I get why technically it's a limitation. And I do have to say, I don't side with, you know, the short-term flippers who are just trying, like, in this bear, it did feel a little bit like, well, why now? Why is this the thing now? And it's like, okay, I think the people who are used to day trading this stuff, who really, they're seeing bags shrink, or they're like, okay, things aren't working the way they were. It's not as easy as it was before. Where can I skim a little off the top? I know the artists are taking it personally.
Yeah.
And I know any flipper that I talk to is like, well, it's not the artist, it's the big 10K projects. But from my point of view, everyone that was playing in the space up until like a week ago, the rules we were playing by, the thing we all accepted, the thing we all bought into was, there's royalties for creators. And to all of a sudden change that on the fly, even if like a project made a lot of money or whatever, like, yeah, that is what we all signed up for.
Yeah.
So I was a little salty about it, but I think I agree with your sentiment that, like, it's because it's possible to go to zero, it's probably going to zero. And I everything that we're doing, like with Wordagami here, we were planning on, like, okay, we're going to do secondary sales, and we'll set up a grant, and we'll do a quarterly grant and fund, and like, we'll just use those funds to fund an artist. It's like, well, I mean, now if they honor secondary sales, and maybe this is just a blip in the radar, but I think I want to plan on it continuing to go to zero and try and raise funds for artists and things like that otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important things. It's like, it's always been a possibility that people could circumvent royalties, but most projects weren't aware of it, or weren't thinking about it, or were just used to it, and so maybe their business model relied on it. And it is really just smart to be proactively thinking about what happens if it goes to zero. Maybe it doesn't. And I go back and forth. Like, there's a side of me that goes, well, of course the traders are going to win out, and, you know, as long as there's a way to get an edge, people will find it and exploit it, and there'll be a race to the bottom. But I think there will absolutely be pushback, both on a social level, but also on a technical level. And I've heard of several solutions already, or like quote unquote solutions. Sorry, I just hit my mic. And sort of like, you know, potentially you could release a collection, but have a blacklist option, and say, if this collection cannot be traded on SudoSwap, and then all of a sudden you only allow approved marketplaces, or you don't allow certain, and that's never going to solve it. Like, someone can still go over the counter and give their friend cash and they transfer it, but I think it might mitigate the majority. And then another marketplace pops up, but then if you can just blacklist that, it's like this cat and mouse game. But I think it's a lot easier to blacklist a marketplace than it is to fork one and deploy contracts. It gets expensive and all that kind of stuff. It's not my original idea. I've heard a few people talk about it, but it is interesting. But I think different revenue models is certainly something to think about as well.
We're due for all kinds of shakeups in this space. You know, like airdrops and merch drops. If we're still doing that 5 years from now, God help us.
If we're doing it a year from now. Yeah,
it's true. That is like a decade in this space. So yeah, if we're doing that a year from now, that shouldn't be what convinces people to stay. I think there's other ways to bring value and to support artists and to continue to grow and expand, and I'm open to exploring that. I mean, I think we need to keep this space healthy. So
100%. Last thing I'll say on this is your point about, convincing artists to join the space, or one of the selling points is, royalties forever. On the weekend, I don't know if it was before this broke out or just after it, but I was just randomly scrolling YouTube on my TV, and I found a video. It was like an anti-NFT video. It was kind of neutral, but like largely anti-NFT. And was talking about how all these NFTs are terrible. I like the presenter. He was fairly unbiased and well reasoned. And he did say like he liked generative art NFTs, and there were some use cases. But then he said, and the best part though is you can get perpetual royalties. And I was like, oh no. it's a shame. Yeah.
I'll tell you, it was one of the bigger drivers that initially brought me into the space. And I've got 2 young kiddos. And I've been self-employed, independent creator for a very long time. Also have some like shaky health stuff, and the promise or the allure of, hey, you can create something that beneficiaries could yield something from in your absence. That was a very appealing prospect to me, and to see that removed, it's like, so that, but then like you go like this and then you go, okay, so another way then, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
there'll be other ways.
So it's, yeah. So that is, this space is changing fast, and this is one of the elements that's changing. So I think things will settle in time. I think we'll reach some cultural norms and a cadence to like what's accepted, and I think it will be different for different projects. So maybe for independent artists and creators, that is still a standard or a norm that we're okay with. But to that point, if that creator is no longer active, if it's a posthumous situation or something like that, like, is there incentive to continue rewarding them? It happens in the music industry, the established music industry, but we don't see it on the art side. There was a great documentary, The Price of Everything. Have you seen this yet?
No, but I've heard about it. Like, a lot of people are talking about it, yeah.
And there's a book they're going through in proof right now, the $12 million
Stuffed
Shark. And both of those, they cover artists who sold pieces for like, a couple $100. They explode, and at secondary markets, those pieces end up selling for tens of thousands or even millions. And the original artist walks with, they're like, great, like my work's famous, but I'm still in a studio apartment and struggling here. So the promise of escaping that, I liked that, and I would love to find a way to celebrate and support or continue to kind of build norms around that. But I understand that it's not enforceable, at least in our current tech.
Yeah, it's a social contract. It's a cultural thing, Pay your royalties. Tell your friends to pay your royalties. Tell newcomers to the space to pay their royalties. If we can do that, again, like I'm skeptical for these larger 10K projects that it will be a thing, but I'm optimistic, and I really believe that for like independent artists, for smaller collections, that's a culture that we can really keep forever. It's possible, but we got to be proactively thinking about it, which is
Have you had to switch? So with ZenAcademy, I don't know what percentage of secondary royalties was like factored into the things you were doing. But have you, like, you're not a 10K project.
It's almost, but yeah.
But have you had this change at all?
Yeah, so I've been actively thinking about this maybe for like 3 or 4 weeks. So before this all blew up, maybe because I'd heard of SudoSwap or just thinking business things. I knew when we launched that we would get some revenue from secondary market royalties, but I never intended for that to be the only revenue source. And my idea was always, all right, so we're going to launch and then... Well, so there's 2 parts to this. One is, what if the floor price goes up really high for ZenAcademy, but then someone wants to join? It's like, well, it's sort of antithetical to the whole come and learn about NFTs, but you got to pay $4,000 for an NFT to do that. So I thought, well, maybe we'll have like a yearly membership option and or some other ways, and we obviously have the free option. So I was already thinking about like a subscription model, and I think that makes a lot of sense, especially for these like utility or membership based projects. Proof is 3 years, and maybe that they will, I'm sure that Kevin and the team are thinking about ways to extend that and reward the existing holders. But it might be that after 3 years you have to pay another 2 ETH to join. Is it that it's if the floor price is 100 ETH and you're happy to pay that to keep your membership, but it's to give the team running costs and operating costs and that kind of stuff. So I think we'll see more models like that. Yeah,
it seems inevitable.
It
seems smart too.
Yeah. And I guess for us, I guess we're actively thinking about completely outside revenue models to NFTs. So it's like doing advisory services, consulting, audits for contracts, and just like there's a lot of stuff you can do in the space that's not selling NFTs or relying on secondary market royalty, but still brings money into the business, and you can use that to help the NFT holders.
Sure.
And pay people and all that kind of stuff as well. So definitely thinking about it. And look, we have upcoming in the next 6 months, we'll probably do a PFP drop. That's something we're working towards. And
nice.
We're rethinking, it's a lot of fun. We're rethinking the model because previously we were baking in royalties as some part of that, but maybe now it's like, maybe we go a higher mint price, but no royalties. Maybe we just decide to do 0, or maybe we go 2% instead of 5 or 6 or whatever we're going to go with. Maybe we withhold some supply. There's a lot of stuff. So we're definitely thinking about it. We haven't figured it out, but it's, like we have been reliant on secondary market royalties up until now for some of those ongoing expenses, and I recognize it's not sustainable. So pivoting is necessary. Yeah.
That makes sense. It makes sense. I love it.
Yeah.
Love the insight, man.
I could chat to you for hours and hours, but we should probably wrap this up, unfortunately. Yeah. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on you want to quickly get to? Anything you want to talk about? Where can people find you? All that kind of good stuff.
I'm on Twitter at PhrazeArt. And
Phraze with a Z or a Z?
PhrazeE art.
Yeah.
Yes.
We'll have a link below. Yeah.
Yes. And getting excited for this next release. That's it. And I love looking to what you have to say in the space. I love looking to the things you collect and the people you support. It's been you're one of my favorite people in the space. Like there's a few people that it's like, okay, well, but what does Ryan have to say about this? Okay, cool. Okay. Let's see what the next letter says. No, I love the energy that you bring to the space, and I think you walk a nice balance between I don't know, like long-term trading, occasional degen trading. Like you've got
I'm not above degenning. Yeah.
No, I don't think anyone should be. I don't think anyone should be above shit posting from time to time.
Yeah.
Like there are some days you wake up and you choose violence, and
yeah.
it's so many people bring so much to this space, and I'm grateful that our paths have crossed, and happy to support anything that you're doing, and grateful for all the support that you've given to all the projects we've done so far. So
I appreciate that so much. The feeling is very mutual. I'm grateful our paths have crossed as well, and I really respect you and appreciate what you're doing for the space. I think it's amazing. You're really shining that spotlight on creators, and it's very generous or altruistic, and it's not self-serving and just like me thing. It's this whole, it's the true WAGMI, right? WAGMI's turned into a meme, but really, like, the core essence of this is we can all help each other and lift each other up, and we should. And yeah,
a rising tide raises all boats, or something like that, right?
100%. Raising tide lifts all boats.
Lifts all boats. Yeah. That's the way.
But a raising tide raises all boats. That's a good note to end on. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for everyone for listening. This has been ZenChats.
Thanks so much, man.